Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is David Vose. I'm Vice President of Risk Management at Archer. And today I want to talk about the concepts of risk appetite and risk tolerance and what they mean and how we can use them. So if we go to the undeniable source of all information, Facebook, you will often see memes like this: be reckless enough to gamble all or nothing to follow your dreams. Well, not really. We should be at least a little bit cautious, and we should know which risk we're taking and what gambles we're really making. After all, we're not all Tom Cruise, and my hat off to Tom Cruise. This man certainly risks everything in the pursuit of his art. Fantastic films. So what do the words mean to non-risk people? Well, appetite, if you go look it up in the dictionary, appetite is a desire or need for something, especially food. That makes sense. We all understand appetite. And appetite sort of implies that there's good stuff to be had there. And tolerance, well, tolerance doesn't really suggest that there's good stuff. Tolerance is the ability to bear something unpleasant or annoying, or to keep going despite difficulties. And it's actually a second meaning of tolerance, more in the engineering world, an allowable amount of variation of a specific quantity. So, for example, if you've got a machine, there'll be a tolerance to some microns of variation that's allowed on, say, the diameter of a piston. All right, so we've got the human understanding or the individual understanding what appetite and tolerance mean. So what does risk appetite and risk tolerance mean? Well, let's go to some authoritative sources. Well, according to ISO, you can see there, this is the ISO Guide 73/2009 in English. Appetite is the amount and type of risk that an organization is willing to pursue or retain. And for them, tolerance is the readiness to bear the risk in order to achieve objectives. And that sounds to me like really just the difference between willing and readiness. And I'm not really sure what the difference there is. And I feel I'm not alone here. Now, on the other hand, COSO, in their paper, Strengthening Enterprise Risk Management for Strategic Advantage, well, they went and said appetite is the amount of risk that an organization is willing to accept in pursuit of stakeholder value. Well, hang on. Isn't that the same thing as what ISO calls tolerance? And so what do they call tolerance? Well, they call tolerance an acceptable levels of variation an entity is willing to accept around specific objectives. And to be honest, that's a mouthful. I don't really understand it. So let's go to an example. All right, for example, quoting their article there, an entity that has set a target of a customer satisfaction rating of 90% may tolerate a range of outcomes between 88 and 95%. Well, hang on. Why would they tolerate something more than what they're aiming for? So they're aiming for 90%, but they'll tolerate up to 95%. I mean, wouldn't you want to tolerate, in inverted commas, 100%? I certainly would. To my mind, this idea of bracketing up and down around something doesn't really make sense for tolerate. And well, look what they've done. They've gone and used this interpretation of tolerance from the building code or engineering idea, that rather specific version of what tolerance means, and certainly not in the common vernacular. There are other contributors to this. If you go to, for example, Google and start searching for risk appetite versus risk tolerance, and maybe take a look at a few of the images that come up. I picked up a couple. So on the top here, you've got risk tolerance is apparently to left and right of some central value. So we got a bracket around that, and that plus or minus that risk tolerance is an acceptable risk. And if you add treatment in there, then it becomes risk appetite, and we've got risk thresholds, and risk capacity is, I don't really understand this, but I mean,